Hi guys, Terry here. It's a cold, blustery day in Ohio, but I wanted to show you some ideas for making some Christmas cards. So I've got these stamp sets that I bought a couple years ago from Penny Black, and I want to show you how I made these cards. Let's get started. So here's one of the stamp sets. It's a wreath, and like I said, I got these from Penny Black. And it's just beautiful. The thing that I struggle with is they give you this beautiful picture, but it's really, what you have to remember is it's a stamp that's going to stamp in all one solid color. So here's how I used my Tombow markers to make this pretty scene. So this is one of them. This one is from Penny Black, and I will have links on my website to these stamp sets. So this one's a wreath. I thought the cards turned out beautiful. And then this is the second one that I loved. And like I said, I bought these a couple years ago and hadn't used them yet. So this one is a bird. On the back of their packaging, that's why I kept the packaging, they have what the art should look like, or an idea, suggestion of how to color it. So I took my Tombow markers and I looked at what colors were best suggested for these. So these ones I found to be very the colors that I wanted to make the card. So once I experimented with my Tombow markers and found the ones that I thought were the right ones, I just jotted it down, and then I'm going to keep that with the stamp set. So when I make it again, I know what to use. You can always change it up, but at least it's a starting point. Because I think we buy these stamp sets and it's almost overwhelming, how to get started. So one of my tips that I like to use is I use Neenah 110 pound weight cardstock in the 8.5 by 11. I buy a thing of it, and then I cut these in half for my card bases. So those are my card bases. Once you've got the card bases, I think that's a good starting point. And then the other thing that I have is I have the Neenah white cardstock that is only 80 pound. So this is a little less thick, and this is what I stamp my image on. And then this time what I did was I used these on a clipboard, and I actually sat in front of the TV. After stamping a bunch of them, I took them in front of the TV and watched a show and colored them that way. So it was a nice peaceful evening coloring those. So I suggest having, this size. And then as you can see, I matted them. So if you look at the card base being made out of an 8.5 by 11, cut in half, that's the card. The mat, making that a 1/4 inch less, is that size, and then the top actually gets cut to 5 by 3 3/4. So that just makes for a nice, I think the border, matting it on a color, and this could have been green. The card stock itself for the card base could have been another color too, but I like this look. I like the heavy cardstock, and then I need to put I'm either going to put a greeting in here or maybe just a greeting inside there. Haven't decided that yet. And then I have a bunch of different stamps that I could use for the inside. Here's one from Honeybee Stamp. So I think this is a Gina K one. Celebrate the joy of Christmas. Merry Christmas. Love the fonts on this one. This one might be Jilly Bean. I'm not sure. I like this from Our House to Yours. I thought that would be pretty inside that wreath. So lots of possibilities. Here's another Gina K one. Warm Winter Wishes. Happy Holidays. Merry Christmas to you. This one's got Happy Hanukkah too. So that's from Gina K. And like I said, I'll have a link to these just to give you some ideas. But like I said, I had bought these stamp sets a couple of years ago. Finally sat down and decided to make them. I've got my Tombow markers. I have just a small collection of them, and like I said, I found these colors to be the ones that I wanted to use on these. And then I think another thing that I noticed was as I worked on them, I got better at it. So I think it's one of those things. They each look different. I noticed from the picture that, there's a couple different tones on the pine cones, a few different colors on the fern part, the wreath part. And I didn't add water. I just used there's a Tombow blender marker that I used on some of it. But really it was just coloring it and making it look like the picture. Here I added a little bit of green up here. I don't think you can make it wrong. I just think I got more comfortable with the coloring each one that I did. So I think practice, helps improve it. The other thing that I did was I found that the card was very stark, so I inked around the outside on each one. That added a lot to it too. So I learned a lot blending on the bird's head. This was a nice easy stamp to do because I just colored the branches brown, and then I just had to play with coloring that little bird. And when I first did them, I didn't like how they look, but now that a day has gone by, I kind of like how they're, each one's different, and I think I got better with practice. So you could put gems on these. I didn't do that, but or you could do something to make the berries look glossy. I just used a variety of colors, and I used the colors that I had used on the little birds. So I think they turned out good. So let me put one together for you and show you how I did it. Okay, let's start by cutting our cardstock. So I'm just going to cut this in half. The paper is 11 inches wide, so we're going to cut it at 5 1/2. I think the other thing that's handy too is to make them in bulk, because as you're doing this, to do it for more than one card is handy. So I already had a stash of my 80-pound, I just have a stack of this on my desk that I use. So that's ready to be stamped on. I think these are 4 by 6, so I'll trim them down after we stamp on them. And then, like I said, the mat is 5 1/4 by 4. So you can take your 8 1/2 by 11 and cut it in 4. I'm cutting it on the 4-inch mark. And we can get 4 out of 8 1/2 by 11 piece of paper. So I'll cut this at 5 1/4. Sometimes I don't decide the color of the matting until after I've stamped and colored. So I got my score pal out, and we'll score these at 4 1/4. And then I have a Teflon bone folder that I use just to make that crease even on there. So there's our card bases. So next, let's stamp one of the stamps. So I am going to stamp using my Misty. I like to do this because if I have, any spots that I miss, I can stamp it. And because my stamp is a little bit wider than my paper, I'm putting my paper all the way to this side, and I can feel that it's up against here. So I know exactly where my paper is, so I can reline it up. But I'm going to pick up that. Oh, forgot to take the mat out. So the Misty comes with a mat for when you're using your clear stamps. This is rubber stamp, so I need to take that pad out, line that up again. And remember, this white piece of paper we're going to trim down to be 5 3/4. But for now we're just stamping and coloring it. So I'm going to pick this up. I decided to do, you could stamp this either in the green or the brown. I decided to stamp it in the brown. So I'm using espresso Stampin' Up, but you can use any color that you have. Give it a good coating. And we'll just press this down on our paper, and we're letting that ink absorb into the paper. And it'll probably take 2 times. So that's pretty light. I want it to be a little bit darker. The other thing I'll do is I'll make sure I'm pushing down my ink pad to give these pine cones a good coating on the bottom there. It's a big stamp. It's bigger than the piece of paper. But I fell in love with this stamp when I saw it on their website. I think a couple years ago it was on sale. And like I said, I'll have links if I can still find it on their site. But isn't that pretty? So I let that dry. And then I also use, and like I said, if we're going to make a bunch of them, you could just put your next piece of paper in here and keep it going. But for now, I'm going to wash off my stamp. I love the Lawn Fawn chamois, but a lot of companies have the chamois. It really cleans off the stamp well. Okay. So there's that. Now, like I said, when I decided to color it, these were the Tombow colors I decided to use. And I really did find it relaxing letting those. I might even hit it with my heat gun here. Let me dry this off. You could emboss it too. I didn't go to that trouble. I just wanted it to be natural looking. So what I did with the coloring was I started with my light brown and my light green. And I just did a light coating on the pine cones. Just a solid light color. You could also use watercolor paper. I'm not in this case, and it came out fine. But these are Tombow water-based markers, so you could watercolor it. I just wanted a more solid image. So I colored the pine cones, and then the other thing I did was I turned it so that my hand could naturally follow the twigs. And I wasn't trying to be perfect with it. It's a homemade card. You could use this tip, or you could also use the bullet point. And the more cards I did, the better I got at it. So I think, like anything, it just takes practice. But I wanted to give a light color to those things, and then go back in with the darker color to accent it. So these ferns, I call them ferns, I just went along and kind of wanted to know where each stem was. And you just do it little by little. And it doesn't look like much when you're starting out with it. And remember, the stamp is there just to give you some guidance. It doesn't have to be followed exactly. But that's what I did with the light color. And then I went in with a darker color. So let's do the darker brown, the 969. And I used the bullet tip. And I just did a little section on each of the pine cones. And like I said, this was something I got better at as I did them. I kind of learned to do a zigzag. And you're just adding some color to it. I'm not following the lines exactly. I'm just giving it some definition. You can shadow more one side than the other, or just go back and forth. Remember, our eyes play tricks on us, so it doesn't take much coloring to trick the eye into seeing, you know, a beautiful picture on it. So let me go back to the light green, and then I simply did tick marks up and down. You could do this with a bullet tip. I just did it with the brush end because I eventually want these ferns to look very filled in. And I just kept doing tick marks out to the end of the, and I think it's okay to go past where the image is. You're filling that in, just following it. I won't do the whole thing there, but then let me go in with the darker one, the next darkest green, which is 158. Oh, this is 177. Let me find the one. Oh, 158 was the light one. And then we go in with the next one and just make more tick marks. Until eventually it just looks more and more filled in. You could use your blender pen. I'm just trying to fill in color. I'm not doing anything fancy, I'm just filling it in with little tick marks. And then I used this 38 is a different brand. This is Zig color brush. Again, it's water-based. But I took this one just to give it this. So this is something I've seen Stamps by Judith do. She will use this, and notice it has a blue color to it. And she will just do some more little swishes. And I'm not an expert at it, but I'm just learning to play with it and do these. Then you can go back with your light. Just do some more. over it, and these inks will blend together, and but hopefully it's a show. I mean, I'm just playing with it. I've seen other people play with the markers, and you could use the blender pen then, just to make it a little bit more filled in around the pine cone. Okay, so let's trim this down and assemble the card. The last thing I want to show you is that I inked around the edges, and it really adds a lot to the edge. I'll show you the before and after. So, like I said, this is getting cut down to 3 1/4 by 5. Actually, before I glue it, I want to show you. So here it is without the inking around the edge. So here it is plain. Here it is with the inking. I don't know if you could tell it, but it really, it's pretty without the inking, but I think the inking just adds another dimension to it. So for inking, I just used one of my little ink daubers, and I decided to use my chocolate chip. It's just a little bit lighter color of brown. So you'll see it transform here. It is amazing what the inking adds. And you can do just a little bit around the edge. What I like to do on the corners is really darken that corner. This is a step you could totally skip. You have a lot of cards to make. I know coloring is time consuming, but like I said, I did it sitting in front of the television and found it to be very relaxing. So if you just take a day where you stamp your card fronts, and then have another day where you color them, and then have a day where you assemble them, you know, you could make a batch of them. I just put a little bit of liquid glue around the edge. I like liquid glue just because it gives me time, a little bit of wiggle room. And it adheres well, especially with the heavy cardstock. And then when you put it on your card base, open up your card and make sure you're going the right direction. So there you go. So I'll have links to some of the tools that I used and any of the stamp sets that I can find that are still available. And I thank you for watching. And I hope this encouraged you to get your stamps out and play with your markers. So thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me. And I hope you have a great holiday. Thank you.